Hey there, welcome to another episode of Always Inspect Your Remanufactured Pumps. Today we have a 480E pump. It's going into an 03 unit, and the original pump was damaged both as part of the course of just wear and tear, as well as some procedural errors made by the builder, who's a do-it-yourselfer. So we needed to replace the entirety of the pump assembly, not just one half or the other. This pump came from my hard part supplier, presumably originated from Transtar. Transtar is a distributor or retailer. They're not necessarily a manufacturer of parts. They get their stuff from all over the place, literally all over the world, not just the United States. So this pump appears to come from a company called Total Transmissions Chicago. At least that's what it says right here. I know you can't see that, but that's what it says. So what we're going to be looking for here is working surfaces. We want to make sure that they are freshly machined, no scoring. The stator support needs to be perfectly flat, as does the bottom of the gear pocket. And then we're also going to be looking for crescent wear. The crescent should be brand new on both sides. And then of course the deck surface. Then we want to see adequate sealing integrity in all of the hydraulic circuits when we vacuum test the stator support valve trains. We want to see a minimum of 15 inches of vacuum on our boost, pressure regulator valve, torque converter clutch apply valve, and torque converter clutch limit valve. Alright, and then of course the other things that you want to consider, I don't know how important this is going to be for you, but little intangible things like how well is the assembly packed. You know how it is with shipping. Unfortunately, people that generally work in the logistics industry, they're not the most gentle when it comes to dealing with handling and moving packages from place to place, from truck to truck, or whatever. So you want to make sure that the company that manufactured this pump, assuming they're the same that is also responsible for packaging it, did a good enough job to protect it from rough handling during transit. So anyway, let's go ahead and open it up. This has a 75-hour core charge. So my parent company's name is Powertrain Concepts, but basically what happens is you have to keep this box, so I'm not going to rip it up or anything, and you put the old pump assembly in there, take it back, and you get your $75 back. So one good test you can do even before you start taking it out is just kind of flip the box around like this, and you can feel, if it's not packed very well, you can feel the weight of the object shifting inside. The pump is kind of an eccentric object, and you'll know it if it's allowed to shift all around inside the box. And that's kind of what we have. So as you can see, there's literally no packing material in here whatsoever. Alright, they wrapped it in a bag. Presumably they want you to have this bag handy so that you can put the old core back in. So let's see, they do have all the bolts. There is no seal installed, that's typical. Let's see if bushings have been installed. So, just get a little bit closer to the camera. We see a new pump body bushing. Looks like it has been installed. Looks like there's some marring on it though. And then you have a stator bushing in the front and in the rear. I'll be honest, I don't know to what extent these are actually new, or if the company just simply sanded them down. I couldn't tell you, but my practice, and this is what I would advise you to do as well, unless it's super obvious that the bushings are brand new, I would count on replacing the bushings, especially in the stators. Typically the bodies will come with new bushings, but the stators oftentimes will not. So we know we need a pump O-ring. It's rare that the pumps will come fully 100% ready to drop in, and this is true of most transmissions. A lot of times you'll have to add superficial stuff like sealing rings and O-rings. If you end up working on 6R140s, and you have to buy a Reman pump from Transtar or elsewhere in the aftermarket, count on having to take that pump apart so that you can add an O-ring to the pump body, as well as sealing rings if you have a PTO pump on the PTO gear. And if you don't do that, if you just drop it on in without taking it apart and adding the pump O-ring, you will not have any third, fifth, or reverse gear. Alright, 15 to 20 foot-pounds on these bolts. So I'm just taking a quick gander. You want to cross-reference your casting number with the casting number on your old pump, so that applies to both halves, your stator support half and the body half. Okay, when we get this apart, I'll show you a quick and easy way to determine if your pump body is compatible or not. But the stator support, there's a couple of different supports being produced around between 97 and end of production. 9703 is one vintage, 04 and up is another, and the casting has different ports here along the side. I mean, not counting the actual bolt holes for the pump to case bolts, but the ports particularly for cooler lines. So just things to keep mindful of with respect to the 480E. So expect to see a new set of gears in here. If not, there would be an egregious miss on their part. Alright, so we have the working surface on the stator support. It appears to be freshly machined. We'll check it with a straight edge and a 1/1000 feeler gauge in a second, but put it aside for now. And then we'll take a look at the body. So these look like factory gears. The aftermarket gears don't have dots on the driven gear. They do on the drive gear. And right away I'm seeing these gears are actually used. They're not new. Man, this looks like wear to me. I'll have to double check with the supplier, but I don't know that this gear set is new. At least the drive gear. Let's see the driven gear. Yeah. So these are, I believe, original factory gears. Now this does not mean that I cannot use these gears. If the gears are in good shape, then you can use them. So you want to check here along the sides of the teeth. You can see wear patterns. I mean, it's obvious now that I'm looking at it that these gears are not new, and they do have some wear to them. So I'm going to be not inclined to use them. All right, let's take a look at the pocket. Now, one thing you need to be aware of is if they machine the crescent, it's probably for oversized gears, which means I would have to reuse those gears or use those gears. Yeah, I'm not super crazy about what I'm seeing here, to be perfectly honest. I don't think I'm going to run this pump. I mean, you can kind of see a little bit of wear here on the crescent, but for a remanufactured pump, like, this thing should be absolutely flawless. And I see some shiny spots. Alright, dots face up, and you want your flats for your converter hub offset to the rear. I believe the clearance calls for between 8/10 thousandths and 3 thousandths between your drive and driven gear and the deck face. So this is a 1/1000 feeler gauge. And this is going through quite easily. I mean, it's a little bit tight right there on one of the flats of the drive gear. The other thing that you want to keep in mind when you're doing this check is don't put the straight edge over the crescent either. And you want to stay away from the crescent. You just want it over the two gears and the deck surface of the body. Alright, so that's 1/1000. Let me see what 3 thousandths would yield. 3 thousandths would be like an absolute spec limit. If it's got more clearance than that, then it's definitely going back. All right, I think I've identified my 3/1000 gauge, which is going to be this one right here. So let's see if we can fit a 3/1000 gauge underneath. Okay, it won't go there. If I'm moving it, then obviously it's not fitting. Alright, so 3/1000 is not going to fit over there. Let's check here. I believe this was tighter than the other spot, and every time I put it under, I mean it's moving the straight edge. So alright, let's try 2/1000. You might be able to see that, you might not. So if 2/1000 slides under and it's dragging just a little bit, but it doesn't actually move the straight edge, then that would tell me we're okay as far as clearance is concerned. Now, if you want to be super precise about this, you want to use a depth micrometer, and if necessary, a gauge bar, and then mic the thickness of the two gears, and then mic the depth of the pocket and subtract the depth or subtract the thickness of the gears from the depth, and you want to do it in multiple spots. I have a couple of videos that show me actually performing that process on a Crescent style pump. I think it's a Ford C6, but principles are the same. You know, measure in at least 3 spots to the pocket. Again, you don't want your micrometer over the Crescent, and then measure the thickness of the drive and the driven gear, and then subtract the drive and driven gear thicknesses from the depth of the pocket. Let's take one more gander at it. See a little bit of sidewall scoring. This could be from machine work. Let me go grab another set of gears that I know are factory original, and I'll compare them to see if there's any difference in diameter or anything. Alright, so let's take a look. I'm just going to mark my gears to make absolutely sure I don't accidentally mix them up. Okay, so here are my, this is my drive gear. I'm just looking at the diameter. Appears to be the same as the Reman gear. You'll notice the flats on my gear are a little bit more wore. So I would not actually put this gear set in a unit that I would otherwise rebuild. It's just I have them in the drawer for reference, more or less. It's like I'm trying to make up my mind as to whether this apparent wear spot, you know, this kind of blotchy spot here and this one here is actually wear, or if it's a product of casting of the gear and the gear is actually new. So I'll have to check with the, you know, with my supplier. Remanufactured has a broad range of definitions, so it could mean everything from literally all the components or castings or whatever are machined. Internal parts like gears or vanes and rotor and slide are brand new. Valving is brand new or oversized for, you know, like a Sonex valve or something like that. To I just put a bushing and a seal in it and put it back together, and I think it's good now. Like, those are your two extremes. Obviously, you want the former because that's a fully remanufactured pump. You know, as I've described it in broad strokes. But unfortunately, most of the time you're going to get something closer to the latter, which is just you know, a couple bushings of seal and a paint job. The good news here is that these gears that they, you know, installed appear to be 100% factory in terms of their dimension. They don't appear to be oversized, which means that this crescent was not actually machined for an oversized gear set. So yeah, I'm not super pleased with this body. Now, there are pump bodies that you can buy standalone separately in terms of you know, body versus stator support. You can buy the bodies, and I want to say they're about $125, and you know, I get them at the same place that I got this thing at, and those are cherry. I mean, they are brand new, literally brand spanking new castings, brand new gears. They install brand new bushing, and the only thing that you have to do is install a seal. So my challenge here is that I also have to replace the stator half because of what the customer did with the other one. And if you're curious about the details, just check out my most recent 480 teardown video, you know, DIY rebuild, too much of a good thing, or something like that. And you know, you'll see in pretty granular detail what occurred there and why we cannot reuse that original stator support half, you know, this part of the pump. All right, I don't like this body. It's just, I'm not crazy about it. So, especially when I know that a much better body exists, so I'm going to talk to my supplier to see if I can work a deal, or more than likely I'm going to end up having to return this whole thing. But let's go ahead and check the working surface, and then we'll do vacuum testing to see if the hydraulics are in good order. So here, I would expect not to be able to get even a 1/1000th feeler gauge underneath of the straight edge. If this is truly flat, machined flat, which it appears to be, then I won't be able to do that. So again, I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this, but it's a 1/1000 feeler gauge. I think I read somewhere, or somebody told me, that like 1/2 thousandths is tolerable. That's a judgment call on your part. If you know, you want to kind of adopt that approach and, you know, run anything that's 1/2 thou or less. I don't think it'll actually be harmful, especially in a stock to mild performance build where there's, you know, no towing or no serious racing. Engine power is sub 400. You know, these transmissions, let's face it, they're pretty tough. I mean, they could take a lot of punishment, and the pumps are super efficient at you know, flowing fluid, you know, generating fluid volume. So the other thing to consider too is if you had a 1/2 thou clearance, let's just say, when you bolted the two halves together, some of that might be taken up by just simply the two halves coming together and being bolted like that. But if I was able to slide a 1/1000 feeler gauge underneath, then you have to reject it. It cannot be used, and you know, unless you're on some sort of stupidly, ridiculously tight budget. But if you're doing this for a living, you do not want to run a pump like that. That's my advice to you. You obviously do what you want. All right. Before we go any further, you want to check your splines, make sure that they're in good shape, make sure that there's no narrowing of the splines. I'm looking at the splines on this thing, and they look perfect. Check your journal and check your sealing ring grooves, and then check the inner diameter. Okay, make sure that inner diameter is free of any kind of sealing ring groove or, you know, any other kind of defects or concerns. Make sure the journal's in good shape. I mean, if it's a little messed up, or, you know, a little got, I guess, maybe like, you know, bushing impressions or what have you, you can sand it down. But anything more than just very superficial, you know, defects, you'll want to reject it and, you know, send it back. All right. What else as far as visual and physical inspection before we get to vacuum testing? Check this area right here, and I only say that because if you see a line to lube hole drilled, that would mean that somebody had modified this pump, and that's a good thing. But at the same token, no remanufactured pump should have that, because it precludes your use of the Sonex lube regulated pressure regulator valve here. You'll have to run the factory valve, and if you go to vacuum test it, which you do your test right here on this little orifice cup plug right at the balance spool end of the PR valve, and you have a slightly low reading, you cannot install that other valve. Even though it may restore the reading to, like, say 15 inches, you'll have too much line pressure loss, too much line to lube, so to speak. And that was at the heart of the problem that we had with the original pump for this transmission. The customer who built it himself drilled this out, then he also installed a line to lube Sonex valve, and he drilled this out way too much. So, you know, a lot of things went wrong there, but suffice to say, you don't want to see any holes here. In the body, you want to check this too. Now, if somebody did wallow this out, that's great. No harm done. I mean, it saves you from having to do it. But for performance, you want to open this up to 1/4 inch. So just check that as well. All right, I'm going to reposition the camera, and then I'm going to go ahead and grab a piece of paper. I can record vacuum test results, and we'll go ahead and vac test that thing and, you know, see what it's made of, so to speak. All right, first thing we want to do is calibrate the machine. Anytime you use a vac test machine, or at least a Sonex machine, you want to make sure that you calibrate it before your use. Even if you used it like the previous day or even a couple hours ago, it's possible it could drift on you a little bit. So you want to take your test lead. Normally that would go to the test block. You want to stick it here in the calibration receptacle, and then you have 2 valves here you're going to use to adjust your baseline and then your high-end vacuum signal. So this is going to be your bleeder valve, and this is going to be your pump valve. The pump valve has a lead that goes to the air pump, and then the bleeder valve has no lead, but it'll adjust the vacuum signal on the high side. So we want to see a baseline calibrated vacuum signal of 5 inches, and then when we go to test the high side, we're going to plug the calibration port over here with our finger, and we want to see the needle come to rest right on 25 inches. I mean, that's usually not going to take place unless you've already calibrated it. If this is coming out of the box, you know, you'll probably get random vacuum signals all over the place, and you'll have to dial both of these in to get your machine calibrated before use. So I just used this morning. So we are right at 5 inches of calibrated baseline vacuum. All right, now what I'm going to do is plug the port on the side with my finger, so I can come back around here and do it so I don't obscure the gauge. We got 25 inches, and back to 5 inches, and that's exactly what you want. All right, so the first valve I'm going to test is the pressure regulator valve. That's always the first valve I test, and that test location is going to be right here. So that's going to be this balance spool here right at the very end. So you're basically testing both the valve as well as the plug at this location that's secured with a roll pin. So let's see what we can come up with. So it looks like 20 3/4 inch, which is perfect. So I'm going to record that as 20 1/2 because I don't have, you know, 3/4 graduation, but 20 1/2 is very, very good. Like I said, you want to have between 15 and 23 inches of vacuum for any working valve. Plugs should see anywhere from between 18 and 25 inches. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is test the boost valve. This looks like a factory valve to me, so my guess is that there's no upgraded Sonex valve like I like to use. I mean, no big deal. Whatever pump I end up going with, the customer did install Sonex boost and line to lube pressure regulator valve. They will be going into the new casting. So here's the inboard. And I want to make sure that I don't have to plug anything on this side. I don't think I do, no. So inboard signal is pretty weak. Let's try it again. Looks like 7 inches of vacuum. Here's the outboard. That's giving us, looks like 11 and a half. Low signal here is no big deal because you're going to install Sonic's boost valve. It's a 4LEDE LB1. That's 4L80LB1. Alright, now we're going to do the torque converter clutch apply valve. So the Sonic's boost valve and sleeve kit will address any concerns with respect to vacuum signal. So, you know, while I really don't care about the low vacuum signal there, for a Reman pump that's supposed to be otherwise ready to install, that is a concern. So this is a 20. I'm going to record 20. It's like 20 and a quarter. So this is going to be our TCC apply valve. It's a good sign that it actually takes some effort for me to break it loose from the casting. I mean, that was all vacuum. Alright, so when you test the TCC limit valve, which is going to be this cutout right here, you need to plug this little orifice. Otherwise, you only get a partial signal as you'll have leakage coming from there. Alright, if this valve is single digits, in other words, its sealing integrity is very poor, then you could have engine stalling when you put the thing into gear, when you put the transmission into drive or reverse, or any of the manual positions. Alright, this one looks to be healthy at 23, just a little over 23 inches of vacuum. Alright, the only other valve in here that we don't actually test, and we don't test this valve because there's no real way to test it, is the TCC enable valve. That's right here, and it's very rare you have problems with that. So for my purposes, based on how I build these transmissions and the parts I install, specifically the boost valve that I mentioned, this actually passes the vacuum test. However, for the purposes of someone that is purchasing this without expecting to spend more money on valving, this would be a failure. I mean, you have single digits, 7.5 and 11.5, which is double digits, but it's low. So that means that there's going to be some loss of pressure, some loss of signal hydraulically in that boost valve sleeve and bore location in this pump. So, I'm looking at this bushing now. This is an original bushing somebody sanded down. You can buy a wider bushing here, and that will, which is what I do. You know, that'll kind of checkmate any concerns, and it'll stabilize the input shaft a little bit more effectively. The bushing on the rear position also looks like it's been sanded a little bit. So I don't think these bushings are new. I think that they're just reconditioned, you know, via sandpaper. And I mean, if I'm correct about that, that's another knock on this pump. So unfortunately, at least from what I've seen so far, I can really only use half of the pump, and that's this half. I'm going to install the Sonic's lube regulated PR valve if I was to keep it, along with the boost valve that I mentioned earlier. So 4LED LB1. I'll flash the part number on the screen for the Sonic's lube regulated PR valve. I don't know what it is offhand. This valve is fine, the TCC apply, and the TCC limit valve is fine. The surface appears to be in good shape. It certainly looks freshly machined, and you know, there was no way I was getting a feeler gauge underneath of that straight edge when we did that quick check. So I gotta call the supplier and see what they're willing to do. More than likely though, unfortunately, I have to take this and this back as an assembled unit. You know, I don't see them allowing me to you know, just swap this and or I should say swap this body out for another one, you know, from one of the ones that are sold just as the pump body. I mean, there's just no way they're going to allow me to do that. So unfortunately, my search for a good pump continues when it comes to this rebuild. But anyway, that's the video. I'll kind of end it here. Like I said, I can't emphasize enough how important it is to open up your pump assemblies if you're buying them from you know, hard part suppliers or from transmission shops or whomever, to validate that everything that should have been done was in fact done, and that you have good sealing integrity in the hydraulics, good freshly machined or new working surfaces, new gears. Like I said, I don't think these gears are new, I think they're used, and everything else in otherwise good serviceable condition. So unfortunately, that's not what we appear to have here, and I say appear because, again, I'm not 100% certain, like I wouldn't necessarily bet my life on it, but this does look like wear to me. But it could be a product of casting, and that's what I need to find out from the manufacturer and or my hard part supplier, see if they know anything. So if I do decide to run this, if they reassure me that it's good, I'll either annotate this video or I will put some sort of addendum, you know, like another clip on the back of this one, and, you know, give you my reasoning. Oh, one thing I forgot to show you. So on the pump bodies, all the 97 and up pump bodies, in this location right here, they're going to have a rectangular with a partition wall going through it. So these bodies can be installed in any year 4L80E. They can be paired with a first design stator support assembly from 91 to 96, or any stator from 97 and up. I mean, all years 4L80E, this second design body, which started in production in 97, will work. But you cannot prospectively install a first design pump body from a 1991 through 96 4L80E onto a 97 and up stator support. It just will not work. So the only other thing I'll close with is, again, be mindful of your compatibility. 97 to 03 versus 04 to end of production, or maybe it was 07, I'm not sure, but there were two different designs of the casting for the stator support, and you want to make sure that you're matching the appropriate design with your transmission case, whatever vintage that happens to be. Alright guys, that's the video. Any questions, comments, go ahead and leave below. If there's anything else you want me to cover for LEDs, I'm always doing these transmissions, so I'm always going to be creating content. So if you have a suggestion or you want to see something, go ahead and put it there, and I'll prioritize it as soon as I can for you. Until then, thank you so much for watching. Greatly appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day or evening, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.